Okay, here this is actually a very important variable. It's mathematical for you, but you need to understand it conceptually. It is basically the amount of oxygen that is delivered to your working muscles. Okay, technically it's called as the milliliters of oxygen delivered per minute per kilogram of your body weight. It seems like a confusing concept to you, but let me tell you in lay terms. When you run, okay, since you're focusing on running, I'll not focus on any other physical activity. When you run, what is happening? There is a certain amount of demand for energy from the working muscles, which are your legs, right? Now your heart is delivering blood, naturally oxygenated blood, to these working muscles in your legs. There is a demand for oxygen by those muscles. The muscles consume this oxygen. Where do they consume it? They consume it in metabolism. They consume it in burning the energy required for propulsion and making you move forward. Now, we usually define runners across the entire human spectrum in terms of their ability to extract this oxygen from your blood. Okay? What is the meaning of this? Is that there are elite marathoners like the Kenyans and Ethiopians, and then there are recreational marathoners like us. We have a certain variable called this VO2. It is the milliliters of oxygen delivered to your working muscles per kilogram of your body weight per unit time. It's mathematically defined. For example, I'll give you figures which will tell you what exactly happens. A Kenyan athlete will have a VO2 max of something like around 75 to 80. Okay? Recreational runners like us have it in the range of 40 to 45. So we are almost 50%. That's the reason why we can never aspire to run a full marathon in 2 hours and 20 minutes, because we don't have it. Genetically, it is predefined in human beings. You cannot elevate it. You cannot aspire to be a Kenyan runner if you genetically don't have that VO2 max. So that's the concept for you. Endurance is the ability of the heart, the blood vessels, the lungs and the muscles to work in a coordinated manner, okay, to deliver oxygen to your working muscles and to take away the metabolic waste which comes as a result of this energy, right? So this is how do you build endurance, is because you build the entire train. Your heart, your blood vessels, your lungs and your muscles all have to be trained if you want to. It's not just your heart, like I spoke about earlier. Not the stroke volume is not the only thing that needs to go up in endurance training. A lot of things happen in the entire train of your physiology which allows you to become a good endurance runner. We are coming now to the core of how do you train, how do you exercise. Okay, there are three fundamental principles to exercising and you must remember them if you want to evolve into a runner who enjoys his running life all your life. Okay, and it's not applicable only to running, it's applicable to you as a person who takes up any fitness activity, whether it's in the gym, whether it's cycling or whether it's running. Okay, progressive overload. Progressive overload is nothing but a principle in which you make sure that your body is able to tolerate the physiological load you place on it. What is the example? Let's start with a training program. You decided that somebody told you that in running, your long run on the weekend is very important to you, right? Because that's the one which is the bread and butter of how it trains your body. You want to run a 21-kilometer race, you know that you have to progress from the 5-kilometer level up to the 21-kilometer level, right? That's clear to you. How do you do that? There are a lot of people who take programs off the internet and launch into them. Those programs are nice, they are defined well, they have all the safety aspects, but that program may not be the best one for you. Why? Because each of you as an individual has the ability to do a progressive overload which is unique to you. Okay, the program might state 8 kilometers, okay, after having run 6 kilometers the previous weekend, but your body might not have adapted itself to that 6 kilometers because each of you is different. Some of you might be athletic in ability because of your past background, some of you might have been sedentary. So 6 jumping to 8 is not something that you should do for yourself. How do you know you should not do for yourself? Is that you just need to be conscious as to what's happening to your body. There will be stages like overtraining, as I told you, your resting pulse rate will go up, your body is not adapting, you find that at the end, after 7 kilometers, you had to walk. Okay, which means that you are not in that range of going from 6 kilometers to 8 kilometers. I'm just giving you numerical examples. Okay, so if you had to walk the last kilometer in an 8 kilometer, sure, it's nice that you walked and completed it. But if you were to do progressive overload, it means different. It means that if you ran 6 kilometers on one particular Sunday, the next Sunday you decide to come down to 4 kilometers. Why do I say this? It seems very contradictory, but it is something essential to your body. You need to bring down the overall load in your body to allow it to recover and adapt. Fundamental principle of fitness training is the rest period. It's only when you are resting that your body grows. Okay, as a gym trainer, your muscles will grow only at the time when you are resting, not at the time when you are working out in the gym. Please remember that. So if you were to drop your training load to 4 kilometers the next weekend, you allow your body that amount of recovery and rest so that it adjusts to the previous week's load of 6 kilometers. Okay, what happens? When you run 6 kilometers, let's go into the physiological aspects. When you run 6 kilometers, your heart, your lungs are stressed, right? Your leg muscles are stressed. If 6 kilometers is a long distance for you and you felt quite hammered at the end of it, it means there is something called micro trauma which is happening in your muscles. These are microscopic tears which take place in your muscles. Your muscles actually tear. It's not something to be worried and alarmed about or intimidated about. It is a nice thing. It's the one which gives you the ache at night because you ran 6 kilometers in the morning. This micro trauma has to heal itself. Only if it gets healed will you be able to go to the next level. If you don't allow it enough time to heal and the muscle is still damaged and you launch yourself into 8 kilometers the next weekend, you do micro trauma on trauma. So that's how you end up getting aches and pains progressively, and you find that your training is going nowhere. Progressive overload. Make sure that you rest between those times when you take your load up, bring it down, rest a while. Don't start, wanting to do too much too soon just because your friend is going to be running 10 kilometers and you are at 6 and he says, no problem, yeah, it's only 4 kilometers, why don't you come with me? Be sensible about it. It may not be the best thing for you to do. Specific adaptation. Specific adaptation takes place depending on the sport or the activity that you take up. Like if you were to work out in the gym, that's specific adaptation. It's meant to be only for growing your muscles. If you were to be a bike rider, a bicycle rider, you need to do specific adaptation for this. If you are running, do an exercise or a training regime which is meant for running. Okay, and within running also there are specific adaptations. If you're running a 10k race, if you're a middle distance runner running 1500 to 3000 meters, or if you are running a full marathon, there is specific adaptation in training programs even for that. As a full marathon runner, you'll do something very different. As a half marathoner, you'll do something different. As a 5000 meter runner, you'll do something different. So specific adaptation is very important. Don't start doing everything together. There are people who decide to have long cycling rides on the weekend. After having done their long run on a Saturday, they go for a long bike ride on Sunday, because there are enough people who say that even we are going bicycling, why don't you come with us? They go and get themselves hammered in a gym because they've got a personal trainer who tells them you're not doing enough, you need to do hack squats, full squats, deadlifts and things like that, just because there's a personal trainer. And this is a reality. People have personal trainers for the gym, people have a coach for running. And the coach tells you what to do as far as running is concerned, and the personal trainer in the gym tells you to do something else, which is specific to him. But you can't do everything together. You must do specific adaptation for the sport that you're training for. Very important, as I told you, optimal recovery. We spoke about making sure that when you increase your training load, you allow yourself to rest enough, to recover enough, so that you can take your training to the next level. 10 laws of training. Read each and every one of them because it's very important for you. You must train all year round if you want to become an endurance runner. Don't just start training 3 months before the Mumbai Marathon. Start gradually, train gently, which means exactly that. You have to monitor your training through either your heart rate or the rating of perceived exertion, which I told you, the 1 to 10 scale, which will tell you whether you're training gently. Training gradually is what? progressive overload, as I spoke to you, right? You must, as a beginner, start training first for time, then for distance, and then for speed. What does it mean? It means that if you're a beginner, make sure your training program is such that it is time based. What is the meaning of time based? It means on Tuesday I will go for a 30-minute run. On Thursday I will go for a 45-minute run. Why do I say this? If you go for a 30-minute run, you know that you have to go only for 30 minutes and the pace is not important, the distance is not important, right? Nobody told you that in those 30 minutes you should be running 6 kilometers. Nobody said that you should be running 3 kilometers. You will go for 30 minutes because you feel comfortable for that time period. So that's the reason why time-based training is very important for beginners. Nobody should push them that do 5 kilometers today or do 10 kilometers tomorrow. The moment you get into distances, please remember that as a person, as an individual, it is something which is inherent in us. We try to run that distance faster. If I did it on Tuesday, 10 kilometers on Tuesday in 60 minutes, and the next week I'm running 10 kilometers and I do it in 64 minutes, I say there's something wrong with me. I should have run it faster. I should have done it in 59 minutes. That's when you start getting overtrained. So as a beginner, the best thing for you to do is to focus on training time-based. 30-minute run, 40-minute run, 60-minute run, 1.5 hours run. Nobody told you how far you should go. You should only spend time on your feet for that period of time. Okay, then don't set your training schedule in stone. You have taken it off the internet, by all means train. But don't tell yourself that the internet training program tells me on Tuesday to go for a 60-minute run. I'm exhausted. I came back from Chennai the previous night. I slept late. I'm sleep deprived. I had a couple of drinks the previous evening with my sales guys. I'm feeling rotten today in the morning. I don't feel like doing the 60-minute run. Please don't do it. Nobody told you that your training schedule is set in stone. Skip that. Skip the week if you want, because you had a hard, stressed out week. You had a sales conference. You had to give budgets. You couldn't train enough. Don't just do that training because you've taken it off the internet. Alternate hard and easy days. Hard and easy days are required in training because on some days you need to train hard. You need to do speed work if you want to evolve into a faster runner. That's a hard day. On the weekend, you need to run long. You need to run 10 kilometers, and for a full marathoner, you need to run 30 kilometers. That's a hard day. The next day should be an easy day. It means you rest. It means you just don't set an alarm for yourself. It means you get up in the morning and go for a walk with some people. Okay? Achieve as much as possible on a minimum amount of training. A seldom well understood principle of training. There are people who are in the running fraternity, once you communicate with them, who will tell you that I ran 80 kilometers this week, and then you look back at your training log and you find out I've been doing 50 kilometers per week. I'm a wimp. You know, the guy is doing 80 kilometers per week. Nobody said that 80 kilometers per week is good for you. You may be an individual who can be faster than the other guy by running just on 50 kilometers a week. So achieve as much as possible on the minimum amount that you can, and then progress to the next level. Prevent overtraining. We spoke about this. Don't start doing too many things too fast. Rest once a week. There is an element of rest which is required for more than once a week, but certainly you should rest once a week. You should do nothing except wake up in the morning, get your morning fix, whatever it is, if it's coffee, and read the newspaper, do a couple of things, walk the dog. That's called taking rest. Keep a detailed logbook. If you don't keep a detailed logbook of your runs, you won't know how far you're progressing. If you keep a detailed logbook, you'll find out that your times are coming down. You ran the same 10 kilometers 2 months back in 60 minutes. Now you're able to do comfortably in 58 minutes. You've progressed. That's how logbooks help. Set realistic goals. Okay. Don't start telling yourself that I ran a 2:30 half marathon last year. Next year I must do it in 2 hours. It might not be a realistic goal for you. Please remember that. You cannot shave off 30 minutes from your half marathon times if your body is not built for it. So set realistic goals for yourself.